Hello there folks, back again for another video. In this one we're going to be doing another good old tier list. We've brought the tier list back out, we're on tier maker once more, and this time we're going to be looking at doing the forces of the Hobbit and looking at the good armies that you can play as. Yeah, this one's a little bit interesting. I can't say that I've delved too deep into the Hobbit side of things for the Middle-earth strategy battle game, but I do like a lot of the miniatures, and since, as always, this is us looking at things via the rule of cool rather than from a rules standpoint, it's going to be kind of awesome diving into this and seeing what I think about the different factions and how they sort of span out over the release of The Hobbit, and everything else that happened during that period of the game. So what are we going to? We're going to go via this. Let's go via this. Actually, let's go via this page. So I snagged some photos from the Hobbit army book, and thought I would go through this and use it as my guide for when we're looking at the different factions and where we should go. So we'll start off with the good armies of the Hobbit and Thorens Company kicking things off. So Thorens Company came in, of course, the starter box, which was the Escape from Goblin Town. So you got access to a really good set of different miniatures in there, and much like the Fellowship from the Lord of the Ring, the armies of the Lord of the Rings, it very much focuses in on the different characters that you get in the set. And I genuinely think that while I don't necessarily favour the movies as much as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I think the design on a lot of the different dwarves was really cool. And when these miniatures popped up on Games Workshop's website and in White Dwarf and stuff, I genuinely really liked the way that they looked. I thought it was a really nice twist on what we'd seen previously. It was a good update in terms of plastic kits, and I thought that they managed to get a lot of detail out of the different sculpts and stuff when they arrived. I also had a lot of fun playing the game with them. I played a whole bunch of sort of tutorial games and things with them and had a lot of fun. And I think that for the most part, they've done a really nice job with these, and they've managed to capture a lot of the different character of the art, the actors and stuff, and the artists that help bring the clothes to life. It was really fun having to step outside of my comfort zone when it came to painting a lot of these. And while they were painted, I'll say, back when I didn't necessarily do as much of the detail work as I probably should do, well, I probably do now. It was quite nice to see these all painted up and ready to go. I should probably go back to them, actually, and see if I can do some updating for them. Might be something that I do for a kind of like spring clean challenge, is to break out the old Thorens Company and paint them up in a better way than how I left them, essentially. Or at least look at them and sort of turn them into an updated fighting force with a little bit of highlighting and everything as well. So yeah, a really nice little set actually of miniatures, and an interesting faction to play as. I think, as I talked about in a previous video, one of the nice things about the Thorens Company and the Hobbit is that it very much engenders you to dive into the narrative side of things and telling out the story of Thorin and Bilbo and Gandalf and the rest of the dwarves as they fought through Middle-earth and all their different adventures with the trolls, and then to Goblin Town, and then against Smaug and in Lake Town and all that kind of good stuff as well. And obviously the folks at Weta and Warner Brothers and Peter Jackson kind of embellished on all of that with even more fight scenes and stuff in the movies, more action and things. So you can have them going against the spiders and all that kind of thing as well. So yeah, I genuinely think that Thorens Company is a really nice one to have a look at, I think. And especially if you're very, very interested in the painting side of things, I'd say they're pretty high up there on the rankings, if I'm honest with myself. But the question is, where do they fit into this ranking system? I'm not sure. I think we're going to be going, I think they've got to be S tier, right? Or A tier. I think they've got to be A tier. They're going to be A tier, because I think they're really fun to play around with. The models are really nice. They've done a good job on them. The character full models are fantastic. I really like the way that you can tinker with the models in some way. So you can have Bilbo with Sting, or you can have him with his staff, and you can have Thorin with Orcrist, or the Oakenshield by his side. I went for the Oakenshield because that's his name, and had a nice time with that one. So yeah, I'm going to put Thorens Company in there in the A tier. Moving on from that, then we have more dwarves. So we have the forces of Thor and Thrain fighting it out on the battlefield. So if we go back to the Middle Earth section and we crack out the army of Thor, we have some nice miniatures here, and I am already in love. I've got to say, I think that the stuff that Games Workshop did, plastic kit wise, and also to a degree with some of the fine cast stuff when it first came out, I think a lot of it was actually okay if you took some time to tinker around with it and stuff. I won't say that it was the best. It was still fine cast, of course, and nobody really liked that material as a whole, but I genuinely think that they did a nice job with what they put together for the Hobbit and stuff. So yeah, some nice bits and pieces. I think the thing that sells this faction to me are a couple of different things. So we have, well, these essentially, really. So the Thor and Thrain miniatures, I think, are just beautiful. I've seen Damien of Battlestream to Middle-earth working on these and doing some really nice paint jobs, and I think they look wonderful. And I really want to get my hands on some of my own to paint up and stuff. I think it would be fantastic to work on this and bring it to life as an army. I think the young Thorin, Balin, and Dwalin are also really good. You know, say what you will about the painting in the studio and things, but I think in general they've done a really nice job with the range and provided us with a whole host of really fun models for you to have fun with and play out that little bit in the kind of the older days of Middle-earth, back when they were younger, fighting to try and secure their kingdom with their with Thor's father and grandfather. And it's just nice seeing Balin and Dwalin, who are two of my favourite court dwarves in the company, in that kind of younger look from the flashback that I think really works. And yeah, stunning miniatures. I also really like the Grimhammers. I think they did a really nice job with this kit as well. And even though they feel quite titchy compared to some of the other miniatures out there, I think they're really fun and very quick and easy to paint, obviously, as well. It's just a lot of dry brushing and some additional work on the leathers and the cloaks and things, and of course the beards, but otherwise you can get these hammered out in no time at all. But a really fun little set, and I picked some up back when I was getting stuck back into the Hobbit and things. So yeah, I think that it's probably one of the best armies that was presented as part of the Hobbit, and one that allows you to play out a really fun and interesting dwarven force on the tabletop. The interesting thing, of course, is that you're looking at an army. We don't really talk tactics here, but if you're starting out with an army here that doesn't necessarily have a lot of ranged options. I mean, you have throwing axes and things like that, but beyond that, it's very much a up close and personal army. But that kind of makes sense, and I think it would be really fun to make this into a force, especially because you'd be so hero heavy with this, with all three of the young dwarves. And then if you throw these two, if you throw Thor and Thrain into the mix as well, suddenly you've got a lot of points invested in your army. Even before you get to captains and all that kind of stuff, and just bulk it out with Warriors of Errorable, and you've got 600 points very, very easily, I would say. I think it'd be fun to theme it more around young Thorin, Balin, and Dwalin alongside the Warriors and the Grimhammers. I think that'd be the nice way to go. But yeah, absolutely stunning stuff there for the dwarves, doing a good bit of deadly work on the tabletop. Knife work, destroying orcs and goblins everywhere, sending them back to where they came from. So yes, I think it's got to be S tier. It's got to be S tier because it's freaking cool. The flashback is awesome, seeing how Thorin got his name and stuff. So yeah, definitely ticking all of the boxes when it comes to fantastic miniatures, really nice designs, even though some of it's fine cast. Very nice indeed. Moving on then, we have a couple of additional ones for the dwarves. Who would have thought that in a book that's focused around dwarves, we have more dwarves? We have the Iron Hills, and we have Dane Ironfoot kicking ass and taking names. So let's get rid of some of those, and we'll open up the Iron Hills and how they play out on the tabletop. So I'm not entirely sure that they have any of their options here, actually. I think they're all... Here we go, the Iron Hills as a faction. Boom, boom, boom. Is Thordraw going to do that thing where it decides it doesn't like to play with me? It is, but it's okay. We do things on the day here. So yeah, the Iron Hills, really nice looking army. An expensive army. But definitely one that features a whole host of really impressive, cool models. You've got Dane Ironfoot there, stylized to look like Billy Connolly, especially there when you see the likeness in his face. But I gotta say, I find it a real shame that they didn't give him the red axe in this version. I mean, the hammer's there because it matches up with the carriage from the movies and things, but I gotta say, I think that if I was going to pick up a version of him, I would pick up the older one and just paint him differently, I guess. But it's still a cool model, and I like that he comes on his big boar, and it's probably going to be a lot of fun to paint. The Forge World resin as well captures a lot of detail in there, which is quite nice. You've then got all your Iron Hill dwarves with their spears and stuff at the ready, looking kind of cool. Again, I'm not sure if it's something to do with the painting, but it doesn't feel like they've got a lot of detail in their faces there. Otherwise, I think they're quite nice. Anyone who's managed to get their hands on these properly, please feel free to dive in below and tell me what you think. But an interesting force. I genuinely don't think that I would ever collect it, though. I'd maybe pick up, as I say, Dane Ironfoot, because just a cool model, really. But I'm not entirely sure that I would ever collect them as a force. And one model doth not make a fun and interesting collection. So, unless you're playing Smaug, I guess. But yeah, an interesting army, but not one that I am overly sold on as a force. Yeah, even though it's dwarves, I don't really think that I'm going to be picking them up as a faction, really. But yeah, sadly, I think I'm going to drop them further down the rankings. So if we go back to this and find ourselves the Iron Hills, one character is really nice. The rest of it's not really ticking my boxes. I gotta say, I'm gonna say C. I'm gonna say C. Oh, I feel like I'm gonna drop that even more later, I think. Oh no. Oh, well, we'll give it some space to move. That seems like the best way to do it. Okie dokie. So sticking with dwarves, this one's going to be a quick one. We've got Errorable Reclaimed, which is the dwarves that fought outside the walls of Erebor as things got a little bit heated, as an understatement. They battled alongside Dane and the rest of their kin as they fought all the other orcs and goblins and everything else that poured out of the mountain. Interesting models. I like the Bilbo. I think the Bilbo model's great. I think that's a really nice one. And I quite like the armoured versions of these characters. I'm not sure I like them as much as the original Thorens Company miniatures that we looked at before. But yeah, again, there's just something that I'm not feeling about them as a force. I think very much like the Iron Hills, they feel like an army that, or at least an element of what you get for the Hobbit that just doesn't tick any boxes really for me. I like that they're all armoured, and I like that they've done them in their almost full armoured form, as they would have been charging out the gate rather than stripping off some of their armour and stuff like they did in the movies and things. I think this is the way that we should have seen them charging around the battlefield and things. But yeah, I'm not entirely sold on them as a faction, and even though I like the dwarves, they're just not doing it for me. They're not doing it for me, even with lovely Thorin at the front there. So I think they're probably going to go down in C, just like Dane and the rest of the Forge World miniatures there. So we move on. Oh my god! Oh my days! We've got so many new options here. There's lots of factions within factions, really. So here we've got the Men of Lake Town and that kind of good stuff. So if we go back to this, so we've got your sort of the forces fighting under the command of the Master and Alfred. God, Alfred! If there's a character in The Hobbit that I genuinely wish would just go away, it's Alfred. I cannot stand him, and I really wish that he wasn't included, because he is the worst kind of comic relief, where you just don't like the character and you can't wait for them to just go off screen. I wasn't even happy when he died, because it meant that he got an interesting death scene, and I didn't like that. But anyway, models. Master of Lake Town, interesting likeness of Stephen Fry, looks pretty good. I have nothing against the actor who played Alfred, of course. He was, paid to do that and all that kind of thing. And he's very good in other shows. I just didn't like him as the character Alfred. And I know you're meant to hate him, but no, don't want to do that. I would, however, love to see more Bard. I love Bard. I think they've done a really nice job on Bard and the movie likeness. And I think that Bard as a character is just fantastic. I'm a massive fan of archers, and Bard is one of the best archers in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and Middle Earth in general, really. So having him added into the mix, I think, is a really nice impetus to build up a collection of your own, I think, really. And of course, there are different versions of Bard. Are they going to show them here? They're not going to show them here. Of course, they're not. And I really like some of the miniatures he's got. Maybe not this one, but yeah, looking kind of cool. I'm not sure that the likeness is so great on this guy, but yeah. I also think that the Lake Town Guard and the design of them is really nice. I think they did a good job on the clothes and the quilting, and trying to get across almost a little bit more of like a Russ vibe to them, which kind of works geographically, I suppose, when you look at them, kind of hitting on kind of Eastern European vibes, which is a good way to go, and kind of gives them a slightly more exotic feel compared to the stuff that we see down south with the Gondorians and things, and helps to provide you with different cultures and ideas for Middle Earth. And the same goes for the rest of the Lake Town militia as well. I think it's a really nice selection of different troops. I just wouldn't focus anything around the Master of Lake Town and Alfred and things. I would have everything based around Bard and what he can bring to the table and all that good stuff. But yeah, I think that the Army of Lake Town is a pretty nice little set. I think it's, of course, this is all going to be all mixed up all over all sorts of different things. Oh god, so many mini weird sub-factions. I've already forgotten what I'm meant to be talking about. But anyway, I think that when we look at these and we look at the Master and all that kind of stuff, I think this is about here. Obviously I've got this bloody picture of the Master of Lake Town in there, but Bard all the way, Bard for the win. Moving on, we've got, I think this is where we see the Survivors of Lake Town, where we get a little bit more of the crossover thing coming through. Again, I can't remember half of these factions. It's been ages since I looked at the book, but I'm a professional, right? This is what we do. So great, fantastic, thanks. Yes, break down for me, please. That's exactly what I require. Games Workshop website. So, the Survivors of Lake Town. Now this is the version of Bard that I want. This particular archer version. I don't really want the version of him with the Windlance. I don't care for that. I want him to shoot his dragon with his bow, just like he did, rather than shooting it with the Windlance, which he didn't, although, of course, this model was made in such a way that you'd assume that that's what he was going to do, but there we go. I really like the archer model, the foot archer model, and I would absolutely love to paint that up. I just don't want to pay £32.50 for for half of the miniatures in the set, and then just leave the other things in the box, really. But yeah. Alongside that, of course, we had some additional sets that were made. So some of the most recent ones were the Hilda and Percy models, which I think are really nice. And I think they look really fantastic. And it's good to see those characters getting added into the mix. And of course, they got new rules and everything as well, which is really good. I like that as well, because it looks like he's actually just fired the bow, rather than it like he's just let go of it and the string has gone twing and fired the arrow through. I think that's a really nice little set, and really good little resin miniatures. I also kind of like Bard's family as a set. I think they're really fun, and it's nice to see that the characters actually got themselves miniatures. I'm not entirely sure how useful they'd ever really be in the game, I suppose, but it's nice to have them and to be able to put together a fun little scenario set for them. And I genuinely think, again, that if you theme things around Bard and, you know, what he's bringing to the table, it's definitely the way to go, and I would very much sort of take them as my way forward, I think. So yeah, I think it's a really nice little collection of miniatures and things, and yeah, having Bard at the head of it with his bow out is the best way to go. I think it still sits in a B though. I think it's still sitting around there. I think it's kind of matching itself. Bard the Bowman himself is like S tier miniature. I freaking love that miniature, but I'm not sure that it takes them above the B when it comes to them as a force, really. But yeah, there we go. We can also go back in time, because we also have the Garrison of Dale, which is Gideon and stuff. So if we can go to the Garrison of Dale and fire them up, this is where we go back in time to the Warriors of Dale, which is a really, really good set. Oh my god! Now, I had not really looked at this collection, but again, name dropping again. Damien of Battlestream to Middle Earth had been painting up some of these fellows to use with their kind of force set during the gifting of the Winterlands and stuff to the people of Dale. And I think the Warriors of Dale kit, much like what we saw with Lake Town, is just phenomenally put together. I think it's a really nice set of miniatures that provide you with really good bowmen, really good swordsmen, a nice mix of what could easily be male and female miniatures, which is really nice as well. They're posed really, really nicely too. And they provide you, again, much like with what we saw from the army of Thor and Thrain, this fantastic set of miniatures for telling a story that isn't really developed and fleshed out on the screen. And I think it gives me certain vibes, a little bit like the vibes that you get from Arnor as a force in The Lord of the Rings, where you want to tell these stories and you want to play with these characters and bring them to life. Now, obviously, there's not a lot around for them, really. You've got the Knights of Dale, which are your badasses, with their little hairbrush helmets, and you have the Warriors of Dale, and then these are obviously King Brandon Bard II from the Lord of the Rings era. So, you know, they're not quite befitting of what you want to do with the kind of older stuff. But, of course, you could easily use them as captains or something if you really wanted to, I suppose. But genuinely quite a nice little force. Obviously, you're kind of limited in exactly what you can do with them. And, you know, Girion's going to give you a kind of interesting hero, I suppose, but nothing, you know, vastly massive. And, you know, are you really going to give him the wind lance and stuff as well? I think it suffers a little bit from the lack of depth that the army has, but it has some absolutely stunning miniatures in it, and I love that it tells an alternative story. So I'm going to say, based on pure models and the elements that you can throw into it to create some really interesting and fun ideas, it's going to go into A, I think, because it stands a little bit above. Oh, is it? A seems far too good for it, really. The depth of the range, I'm just not sure is. No, it's B. It's B. But I'm going to do this. So I'm going to do that, and we're going to switch things around. So we're going to have the survivors there with Bard. We're going to have Girion, and we're going to have the Master down that end. I know you meant to aid him, but so that's like a low version of that. I think with this one, that kind of makes sense. Yeah. So we've got a B plus and a B there with those armies. Oh my god, finally we move on from humans and dwarves and we start to look at some elves. So we've got Rivendell, which Rivendell is an interesting one. We got some nice stuff for Rivendell, actually, when it came to The Hobbit. And a lot of their range kind of mixes quite nicely in with what we got for The Lord of the Rings as well. But I would say that I think what we saw in terms of character models was quite nice. I'm quite a fan of that sort of Hobbit version of Elrond and Lindir and stuff. Obviously, the Elrond Master Rivendell model is just phenomenal, so that is like the best. So we'll keep that there. Obviously, that's separate. But we've got the Master Rivendell here and Lindir looking rather kick-ass. And I really like that mounted version of the miniature. And again, this foot version's also quite nice. Hadafang in hand as well. So this is when he's just been out to kill a bunch of wargs and riders out on the plains of Middle Earth, saving Thorin and his company and the like. And it's a genuinely nice little selection. It's just a shame that we didn't get much more for it, I suppose. I guess we got the Knights of Rivendell. Are these plastic or are they resin? It is plastic. That's really nice, actually. Oh, God. I didn't realise this was plastic. I thought these were resin, but I think they look gorgeous. And I think I might need to buy some now. Oh, dear. But anyway, Knights of Rivendell looking great as well. So if you're looking to put some interesting troops onto the tabletop, you've got some good options too. Of course, the range suffers from not having had a update for a very long time. So you're missing a bunch of different miniatures from the Hobbit era here, really. So you know, you got your High Elf warriors and your Warriors of the Last Alliance and things. Obviously, you're not going to take Númenóreans in that set, but in general, fairly interesting little faction. Worth having a look at, I suppose, if you're interested in playing as elves. I think Elrond's one of my favourite characters from Lord of the Rings anyway, so you know, he ticks a lot of boxes. Those Knights of Rivendell are amazing. It's just a shame that the plastic miniatures are so old. Is one character good enough to make them shtick? I'm not sure. I think I'm going to have to put them in B. I think they're going to be a B, but they're going to be high up on the B. And I think we'll do that. I'm going to do that. I've done it. I'm going to leave Elrond. I'm going to put Elrond here at the top end of B, I think. Because I quite like, especially now with the knowledge that they're plastic models. I completely forgot that they were plastic. I think Rivendell is kind of up there in terms of the different armies that you can play as. Moving on, we have a little bit of a surprise one. So I didn't think that I was going to enjoy this army at all. I was not necessarily a big fan of seeing Legolas in the movie, even though, you know, of course, he has a reason to be there because he is the son of Thranduil. But I actually really like the stuff that they did for Mirkwood. I think Mirkwood and the Halls of Thranduil got a pretty awesome selection of miniatures. Now, some are better than others. I'm not necessarily a fan of the Mirkwood, the armoured Mirkwood elves and the Palace Guards. And there are some versions of the different models for the heroes that I'm not necessarily a fan of. But I think this Mirkwood Ranger set is just great. I think this is a solid capturing of the qualities of the different elves that you get in Thranduil's Hall. And they're just a really awesome set of interesting, balletic, diverse, characterful miniatures that would... I don't understand why I haven't bought some for myself. I think if I was actually going to do a Hobbit army, I would probably end up doing Mirkwood. I know, it's random. Even though I've talked about young Thorin and Balin and all that kind of thing. That's cool. But I think Mirkwood and the Halls of Thranduil would be phenomenally good fun. And you could have so much of a good time painting up these different characters and getting them to... and getting all the tones and the woodland qualities right, especially with the basing as well. And they've even got masks and really cool hoods, and everything looks like leaves and wood. Oh, it's just so beautiful. I'm not a fan of these so much. I think their helmets look a bit dumb, and I think they look a bit bulky and odd. And there's just something about these that I just don't get on with. I think I'd have to do like a full-on ranger army. That was all about sort of fighting in the woodlands. I just find them a bit weird and almost a bit sci-fi, oddly, in their helmets and designs and things. Also, I would not have Legolas near this at all. This army is going to be led by Tauriel, and Tauriel is going to kick ass and take names. Tauriel and a whole bunch of the badass captains and things like that. That is the way to go. These models, I think, are brilliant for her, and I think she's a character that should have had so much more of an interesting story in the Hobbit movies. I think she got a really raw deal when it came to the kind of mechanical side of things in terms of the business and trying to make this love story and all that kind of stuff. And not trying to rehash, criticism of the Hobbit and that kind of thing. But I think Tauriel could have been an amazing character if she'd just been allowed to be herself and kick ass and take names. And she did do quite a lot of that. But, being forced to do kind of like Arwen-style scenes where she heals Feely, not Feely, Keely? Feely, one of the two. God, I can't remember. I think it's Keely. It's Keely. It's Keely. Oh my God! Please correct me down in the comments. Yeah, it's Keely. Anyway, we're having to do that sort of Arwen scene and stuff like that. And then why does it hurt so much? Because it was real. Oh my God! Let's not. But her leaping around in the forest, shooting spiders and kicking ass, top tier stuff. I also quite like Thranduil, and I think they did a really nice job on him. I much prefer the old version of him in metal, and if I could, I would get that version of him to use on the tabletop. But in general, I think they did a really nice job with the collection, and I think it's really nice to see these models out there in the wild and how much depth they went into with this as well. They clearly had a lot more time to look at the stuff for Mirkwood and the Desolation of Smaug, and it shows. I would definitely pick up this this pack here, and I would use Captains galore. And maybe do some converting on some of the different models from the Ranger set with some different colours or something like that, in order to make a really awesome looking selection of different models to use alongside the Halls of Thranduil without ever having to go near Legolas, because it is all about the awesomeness that is Tauriel. Boom, boom, boom. So, with all that being said, where do they sit? Well, there's a reason that I put Tauriel in the thumbnail. Tauriel's going to have to go right up the top, next to the armies of Thor and Thrain, and the mighty armies of the dwarves battling outside the gates of Moria. Definitely up there, and I would easily, happily make armies out of those models. Lovely stuff indeed. Moving on then, we have Radagast's Alliance. So we have some interesting stuff for this. So let's clear off all of those. I like that it's basically just me just running around and cleaning up my tabs as we talk. It's a nice way to go, right? Yeah. So here we go. Bring that back up. Pop. Right. Yep. So Radagast's Alliance, Beorn, and Radagast himself. So I have a Radagast model. I have one of the nice plastic models that came with the original set and stuff, and that was quite cool. I really liked that. Or is it? But that's Misty Mountains. I got it. I got it in my head. It's all fine. So yes. Anyway, now I've got that around. Now I've got my head stuck around that. Yeah, Radagast, cool. Nice to see them in the mix. I kind of like that version of the model. I kind of really weirdly like the Roscobel rabbits thing. I think that's kind of wicked. And I love that you get the version of him that you can sit on the back of a great eagle. Say what you want about Radagast in the movie. I think this is a really nice version of him, sculpt-wise, even if the character can be a bit odd, I suppose, in the movie. I actually really like... Pardon me. I feel a little bit like in there. I actually really quite like the version of him that was done for The Lord of the Rings, where he's got the bird on the end of his hand. I think it's a really nice older model for the halls of... for Radagast Alliance, not the Halls of Thranduil, the Halls of Radagast, as bird at Roscobel. And I genuinely think he's a really cool character. He's one of the Astari, and the Astari are awesome anyway. But yeah, I'm not sure that everything they're really sold necessarily as a faction. I'm not a fan of this lanky old bear. I really like the actual version of Beorn, and I really like the version of him with his axe held together as well, which you can't necessarily get your hands on very often nowadays. But there's something about this bear that just looks a bit... It looks like he hasn't fed. Like, if you look at it from this direction, it doesn't look too bad. But if you look at it like this, it looks like a sloth or something. The Grimbeorn model for him, I think, is way better. And I can't remember where. Let's Google. Google! Google. So let's have a look at it. Here we go. Grimbeorn. The Grimbeorn model, that is a much better bear, and I would easily use that to represent Beorn any day. And of course, you've got the Beornings and stuff like that as well. But yeah, that's a much better bear compared to this one. Ugh. Maybe if it was painted differently. It just looks like there's no fur. It looks like he's gone for a bath, or as I say, he's a sloth, and it just doesn't match up with the way that I view Beorn as a character. Even though it's pretty big, there's just something that doesn't work for me. An interesting, weird sort of like sub-faction within the game as well that again doesn't necessarily match up with anything else, but sort of allies with things quite interestingly, I suppose. So what would I say for them? Radagast Alliance, where are we going for that? Not a fan of most of the models. Let's just put it down there. Oh god. Cool. Moving on then. We have the Misty Mountains and the forces of Gwaihir and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, as they're flying about in the air, they're a pretty awesome little set, I think, actually. And, who doesn't like eagles, right? I think the eagles are a really nice little set. And did they get... I think they got a Gwaihir force, didn't they? Yeah, they did. So there's the new version of Gwaihir, who's chomping on a wolf there, ready to throw him into the depths somewhere. An interesting model. I don't think I'd really want to be paying £67 for him, but an interesting model nonetheless. I think the actual Great Eagles kit themselves for £30 is pretty nice, and you just sculpt one of these to look like Gwaihir, I think. Just give like a really neat little kind of golden torque or something around his neck. I think that would work quite nicely to represent Gwaihir on the tabletop. But they're eagles. I don't necessarily have anything really to say about them as a whole, so probably just drop them down there, I think, somewhere. Probably. Yeah, I don't really care that much about them. Never going to be buying an army of those. But there we go. And then capping things off, we have the White Council, which is led by the no-nosed Galadriel in that image. But yeah, so we saw a few of these models when we looked at the Rivendell selection earlier. So we'll go back to Rivendell and have a look at those. Here we go. The Vanquishers of the Necromancer. So we've got a couple of these additional models that went into the set as well. So you had the new miniature for Elrond there. We had the new one for Saruman and Galadriel in her more powerful form there, her dread form. Interesting. I'm not necessarily sure on the sculpting for these miniatures. I think the Galadriel one looks kind of nice. The Elrond one looks a little bit angry. I mean, he is fighting, I suppose, but he just looks a bit weird. And their faces seem a little bit flat as well. And I'm not really necessarily sold on them as a collection of models. Again, I'd maybe be interested in painting one or two of them. I'd be interested in painting Galadriel in particular. I think that'd be quite fun to try and get that kind of dread look to her across. But, I'm not necessarily, I'm not jumping up and down for them as a faction, to be honest, really. And I think it's a pretty... it's an interesting idea, but again, it's very much focused around the idea of narrative play and, diving into very specific scenarios for them. So we'll drop that down there at the bottom. Not necessarily that interested in those. Then for the Wanderers in the Wild, we had the weird Thrain the Broken as well. I don't even think you can get Thrain anymore, can you? Let's have a look. You can. Oh my god, you actually can. So you can actually get him in this set with a pretty cool and awesome version of Gandalf. I did not know that existed. It's just been hidden away in the darkness of the Games Workshop website for some reason. But yeah, really interesting model for Thrain. I think that's really cool, and I like that version of Gandalf. Again, you're only really going to be using these for scenarios, which is great, obviously, but, beyond that, I suppose you could see the version of Gandalf being used to put together an interesting force, a fighting force with Gandalf at the helm. But in general, not necessarily, you know, getting me too excited about it. And I think I'm gonna put it there because I think the models are pretty nice. It's got to be better than Eagles. Better than, yeah, let's do that. So there we go. Oh god, things are escaping from me. So yes, my tier list for the armies of the Hobbit, the good armies of the Hobbit. So we go back to the start and we have a look at these. So the armies of Thor and Thrain battling it out on the tabletop and stuff, looking quite nice. Let's go back to the Hobbit. The Hobbit. Go back to the Hobbit. The armies of Thor. A very nice little selection of models. A really fun army to put together that tells an historical, a bit of history from Middle Earth that you don't necessarily get to see very often. And of course, Mirkwood, led by Tauriel. I think he's like an A tier, well, an S tier in this list. Collection for you to play around with. Really fun stuff and really nice models. The company of Thorin and his companions, definitely up there as well. Really enjoy painting those models. Fantastic stuff. Then we've got Elrond and stuff leading the way with the Knights of Rivendell. Oh my god, those are lovely models. And then of course we've got the we've got 3 different flavors of stuff from both Dale and Esgaroth and Lake Town. I actually think I'm going to put the Survivors of Lake Town further up on this, above the Rivendell stuff. And I really like the Girion bits and pieces. I think if I was going to do anything, I'd probably do more stuff with them than I would with that, because I'd probably want to try and keep the Rivendell stuff for Lord of the Rings themed elements, rather than doing them based around the Hobbit, and these are very much Hobbit centric, which is kind of nice. Got the Master of Lake Town and that kind of stuff. I'm not really a fan of those of that particular model and things, but I'm not going to be focusing an army around them necessarily, so that kind of goes down the list. And, you know, they're dwarves, so they're not going to be like bottom tier stuff, but I'm not necessarily interested in making an army of the Iron Hills, and not really going to be doing anything with those models in the arm and stuff. They're cool, but I'm just not a massive fan of them as a whole, really. Radagast Alliance at the bottom there. Interesting. Don't really like the miniature for Beorn. I much prefer the one for Grimbeorn, but otherwise very cool. And I like the model for Thrain the Broken, and that version of Gandalf that we just found, well, I just found out, is still on the website. I need to get that as soon as possible. The Eagles, I've never really done much with the Eagles, to be honest, so they can sit down there. I'm sure someone will bring something up from one of my previous tier lists to talk about, but otherwise they're going to sit in that sort of D set. And then just not necessarily interested in the White Council, to be honest. So they can go down the bottom. They're probably the one that I'm least interested of all, really. But yeah, I think that's an interesting list. Let me know if you agree with me. My hair's all a mess, just like Thrain the Broken. So yeah, some cool models there from The Hobbit, and some armies that I am already aching to have a go at, especially if I can get myself a version of Tauriel and stuff that I can play around with on the tabletop. That would be really cool, especially alongside those Mirkwood Rangers and things. As I said at the beginning, I think one of the nice things about the Hobbit range is that it's very much focused towards narrative play and playing out interesting scenarios rather than it just being a solely competitive endeavour. And I think if that's the focus that you want to go down, there are some really fun models in the collection, even if they're not going to come together as an entire army to make you, you know, excited to play them as a whole. So yeah, if you're interested in diving into playing narrative stuff, I think The Hobbit is the way to go. Definitely come and have a look at some of the models and see what you think of them and that kind of thing. Let me know what you think. Do you think I've got things in the right order? Do you think you'd shift things around if you came to sit at the tabletop and come up with interesting armies and wish lists and things? Drop your comment down below and let me know what you think. As always, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. There's also a Ko-fi link down there if you want to donate because you like what I do, but you don't have to. The most important thing is just liking, sharing, commenting, and doing all that kind of good stuff, because I just love interacting with you folks and seeing what you think and what you like and what you don't like. So yeah, boom. I'm going to be maybe having a little bit of a retrospective in my next video, but until then, I'm going to look awkwardly off camera towards where I need to stop the recording. Oh my god. And yeah, I'll see you folks in another video very soon. Bye for now.